Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. Here, we're going to talk about a woman who was especially captivating in Chinese history. Her story is both heartwarming and inspiring, and it's definitely worth spending some time to explore. She wasn't a heroic woman charging into battle. Nor was she a powerful political figure wielding great influence. Yet her name still shines brightly through the long river of history. A name that has been remembered for over 600 years. She was the wife of the founding emperor of the Ming Dynasty, Empress Ma, consort of Zhu Yuanzhang. When people mention her, many may only know that she was the Empress of Zhu Yuanzhang. But her story is far more than just the wife of an emperor. With her wisdom, kindness, and resilience, she stood by her husband as he rose from poverty to founding the Ming Empire. And she left a unique mark on the dynasty in her own way. Now, let's step into the tunnel of time and go back to the past. To see how she became a model empress of her era. Let's start with her origins. But first, it's important to note that historical records about women in ancient times are incredibly scarce. Especially someone like Empress Ma, who was born during the chaotic final years of the Yuan dynasty. And passed away not long after the Ming was founded. What's written about her in official histories is frustratingly limited. Many of her stories have been passed down through generations. Like the legends told by the elderly. So, the content we'll be discussing here comes partly from official records. And partly from folklore, some of which can't be fully verified for historical accuracy. Empress Ma was born in 1332, the third year of Emperor Wenzong's Xishuan reign during the late Yuan dynasty. In what is now Suzhou, Anhui province. It is said that her ancestors came from a fairly wealthy family, owning considerable farmland and living a comfortable life. Unfortunately, by the time her father Ma Gong's generation came around, the family's fortunes had declined significantly. Ma Gong was a particularly kind-hearted man who enjoyed helping others, often giving aid to the poor, which gradually drained the family's resources, leaving them in a tight financial situation. To make things worse, Empress Ma's mother, Lady Zheng, passed away shortly after giving birth to her, leaving Ma Gong to raise their daughter alone. Though the family was not well off, Ma Gong valued education greatly, and personally taught Ma how to read and write. Ma was very intelligent from a young age. She excelled in history, poetry, and classic literature, learning with impressive skill and quick comprehension. Despite her humble background, the education Ma received was no less than that of a noble family's daughter. However, life is often full of unexpected twists. When Ma was about 6 or 7 years old, the Yuan dynasty was in complete turmoil. At the time, Emperor Huizong of Yuan was on the throne. And the White Lotus Rebellion was sweeping across the land, throwing the country into chaos. Ma Gong offended some people due to certain incidents, and was forced to flee his hometown. To ensure his daughter's safety, he entrusted the young Ma to his good friend Guo Zixing. Guo Zixing was a well-known gentry figure in Suzhou, and his family was relatively well off. He adopted Ma as his foster daughter, and treated her like one of his own. However, some historians believe that Ma's background may not have been so respectable, that perhaps her family was too poor, and she was sold to the Guo household as a maid. But whether she was a foster daughter or a maid, Ma was treated quite well in the Guo household. Guo Zixing's concubine, Lady Zhang, took special care of her, raising her like a daughter. Ma continued her studies, and soon became highly skilled in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. A true all-round talented woman. At this point, many people might wonder, weren't women in ancient China supposed to bind their feet? Did Empress Ma bind her feet? There's an interesting folk tale about this. It's said that because Ma's family was poor and she had to work, she didn't bind her feet. As a result, she later earned the nickname Bigfoot Empress. According to legend, after she became empress, she was a bit self-conscious about her large feet, and always wore long skirts to cover them tightly. Once, while touring Nanjing, a gust of wind lifted her skirt, revealing her unbound feet. The people, having never seen this before, found it quite amusing, and privately began calling her the Bigfoot Empress. Some even claim that the modern Chinese idiom, revealing the horse's foot, meaning to unintentionally reveal a flaw, originated from this story. Of course, this is just folklore. Official histories don't mention anything about Empress Ma binding her feet. It's likely that people found her relatable and down-to-earth, so they made up this story as a way to express their affection for her. Let's just enjoy it for what it is. It's said that Ma lived in the Gua household for over a decade, and gradually grew into a smart and gentle young woman. At that time, the Yuan dynasty was plagued by endless natural and man-made disasters. The Yellow River hadn't been properly maintained for years. When the dikes broke, floods ravaged large areas. On top of that, there were droughts and plagues, and the people suffered tremendously. The Han Chinese had long been oppressed by the Mongol rulers, and resentment had been building up. Finally, in 1351, a massive Red Turban rebellion broke out in the Anhui region. Guo Zixing couldn't sit still any longer. He raised an army and joined the rebellion, even becoming a marshal, and successfully captured modern-day Chuzhou in Anhui. His influence soared. Around this time, a young man named Zhu Yuanzhang appeared. He had been a monk at Huangjue Temple, living a life of poverty and peace. But upon seeing the chaos in the world, and with encouragement from friends, he decided to return to secular life, and joined Guo Zixing's Red Turban army. Zhu Yuanzhang had a striking appearance. Historical records describe him as having a majestic presence, with extraordinary bone structure and a commanding aura. He was a brave fighter, sharp-minded, and extremely hard-working. In no time, he earned Guo Zixing's recognition. Just 1 month after joining the rebels, he was appointed a company leader of 9 guards, essentially becoming Guo Zixing's personal bodyguard. Zhu was not only a capable soldier, but also fiercely loyal. He would always rush to the front lines to protect Guo Zixing. Guo came to admire him more and more, believing that this young man had great potential. So he decided to marry off his adopted daughter Ma to him. At the time, Zhu Yuanzhang was 25, and Ma was about 21, a well-matched marriage. After the wedding, Guo Zixing even gave him a more imposing name, Zhu Yuanzhang. And that marked the beginning of the story of Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang, founder of the Ming Dynasty, and Empress Ma. After marrying Zhu Yuanzhang, Ma became his most trusted and capable partner. She had read many books and was very intelligent, helping Zhu handle military correspondence without a single mistake. Though Zhu was brave in battle, he wasn't very educated and had limited literacy. Ma patiently taught him to read and write, and helped organize military affairs in an orderly way. You could say that while Zhu led battles at the front, Ma held things together at the rear. They were the perfect team. In addition to managing paperwork, Ma also offered strategic advice. Every time Zhu returned from battle, she would analyze the situation for him, pointing out what he needed to watch out for. She was like a military advisor in the home. However, nothing is ever simple in the military camp. Guo Zixing's sons grew jealous of Zhu's rising status, fearing he would take their place. So they began to spread rumors, accusing Zhu of plotting a rebellion. Guo Zixing was suspicious and hot-tempered by nature. Hearing these rumors, he began to doubt Zhu, and eventually imprisoned him on a flimsy excuse, refusing even to feed him. When Ma heard the news, she was extremely anxious. Despite going hungry herself, she hid freshly baked flatbread in her clothes, and secretly delivered it to Zhu. The bread was still hot and burned her chest red. But she didn't mind at all. She even gave her personal jewelry to Guo Zixing's 2 wives, begging them to speak on Zhu's behalf. In the end, Zhu Yuanzhang was released and regained Guo Zixing's trust. This event also showed just how important Ma was in the Guo household. Whether she was a foster daughter or a servant, the Guo family deeply trusted and respected her. In this way, Lady Ma not only saved her husband, but also helped him establish a firm foothold in the military. Some scholars believe that Guo Zixing married Ma to Zhu Yuanzhang, not just because he admired him, but also as a way to secure the loyalty of this talented young man, to prevent him from being recruited by rival forces. A few years later, Guo Zixing passed away, and his son took over the army. But before long, he was defeated by rebel forces. As a result, Zhu Yuanzhang naturally stepped up as the new commander, taking full control of Guo Zixing's troops. For the next decade or so, Lady Ma remained Zhu Yuanzhang's most steadfast supporter. When Zhu clashed with another rebel leader, Qianlong, in a fierce struggle for control of the country, Ma personally led the wives of the soldiers to sew clothes and make shoes, ensuring the front lines had enough supplies. On one occasion, when Qianlong's forces laid siege to Nanjing, panic spread through the city, and people wanted to flee. Ma stepped forward to calm everyone down. She even gave out her own money to support the soldiers, restoring their morale. There's even a folk legend that says, once, Zhu Yuanzhang was injured in battle and being chased by the enemy. Without hesitation, Lady Ma carried him on her back and fled, saving his life. While this tale sounds a bit legendary, it shows just how reliable and courageous she was in critical moments. Beyond logistics, Ma was exceptionally wise. She often advised Zhu using historical stories. She told him that winning a country depends on winning people's hearts, and warned him not to punish others too easily, and to listen more to wise and capable ministers. Zhu had a suspicious nature and a fiery temper, but Ma always had a way to calm him down. For example, once Zhu had a serious disagreement with one of his generals, and wanted to punish him severely. Ma used ancient examples of virtuous sages to persuade him, saying that those who win people's hearts will win the world. She urged him to be less impulsive. Although Zhu appeared stubborn on the outside, he took her words to heart, and gradually learned to treat his subordinates with more tolerance. With Ma's support, Zhu Yuanzhang's military power grew steadily, and in 1368, he captured the Yuan capital, what is now Beijing. That same year, he founded the Ming Dynasty, and proclaimed himself emperor. On the day of his ascension, the very first thing Zhu Yuanzhang did was appoint Ma as empress. This was a rare and significant honor at the time. Many emperors, after rising to power, would cast aside their original wives and choose someone new. But Zhu didn't. He was deeply grateful for all that Ma had done, knowing that without her, he would never have made it this far. Zhu posthumously honored Ma's parents, naming her father Prince of Su, and her mother Lady of Su. He also wanted to grant titles and rewards to Ma's relatives, but Ma stopped him, saying, "Bestowing titles on in-laws is improper and will invite gossip." These words showed her remarkable foresight and integrity, something rarely seen in imperial consorts of the time. While many empresses used their position to benefit their families, Ma stayed true to principle. After becoming empress, Lady Ma continued to live a humble and modest life. She dressed plainly. When her clothes tore, she would mend them and wear them again. She ate simple meals of coarse tea and plain food, bearing no resemblance to a lofty, extravagant empress. She even wove cloth and made clothes by hand for elderly people in need. And gave simple, unadorned fabrics to princesses and royal consorts. So they too could understand the lives of ordinary people. It's said that even Zhu Yuanzhang's socks were sewn by her own hands. Never delegated to anyone else. Once, after Zhu Yuanzhang conquered a major Yuan city, he gained a large amount of gold, silver, and jewels and wanted to gift them to Ma. But she replied, "The Yuan dynasty collapsed precisely because they indulged in these treasures. Your Majesty should value virtuous talents instead." Zhu Yuanzhang was deeply impressed by her words. And even the ministers grew to admire her more. It's worth noting that Lady Ma not only held herself to high standards, but was also especially generous and tolerant toward others. Zhu Yuanzhang had a fiery temper and was quick to punish people. But Ma always tried to calm him down. For example, once Zhu planned to punish the son and grandson of Song Lian, claiming they were too close to certain officials. Song Lian, however, was a top founding civil official of the Ming Dynasty, and had even served as tutor to the crown prince, Zhu Biao. When Ma learned of this, she served only vegetarian dishes at the royal table, saying it was to pray for Song Lian's well-being. Zhu Yuanzhang saw the gesture and, having no choice, exiled Song Lian to Sichuan instead of executing him. On another occasion, Zhu wanted to send convicted criminals to repair city walls. But Ma advised, "These prisoners are already exhausted. If you do this, it's as good as sentencing them to death." Zhu Yuanzhang realized she was right and gave up on the idea. Lady Ma also cared deeply for ordinary people. When she heard that students at the Imperial Academy received stipends, but their accompanying family members did not and lived in hardship, she suggested building granaries specifically to support the students' families. This practice later became a tradition in the Ming Dynasty, allowing students to study in peace without worrying about their families going hungry. She also looked after the concubines in the palace, treating their children as her own. When a concubine fell ill, she personally checked on them. When the imperial sons grew up, she taught and guided them with great care. As a result, the entire harem deeply respected her, and saw her as the true matriarch of the palace. Lady Ma's virtue was also reflected in many folk stories. For example, when Zhu Yuanzhang first took Nanjing, he ordered that households who supported him have the character Fu, blessing, pasted on their doors. Those without it were considered traitors and would be punished. When Ma heard this, she had everyone in the city paste the character Fu overnight. One family, not knowing how to read, pasted it upside down. Zhu Yuanzhang got angry and wanted to punish them. Ma quickly explained. They deliberately pasted it that way because Fu Dao, blessing upside down, sounds like blessing has arrived. It's a good omen. Zhu, hearing this, calmed down and refrained from punishing them. Though the story may be exaggerated, it shows how highly the people regarded Ma. They saw her as a compassionate empress who truly cared for the people. Lady Ma also valued learning deeply. Even after becoming empress, she continued her studies with the help of palace attendants. Upon hearing of the virtue of Song dynasty empresses, she had their stories copied down so she could read them often. When a lady-in-waiting warned her that being too kind might lead others to take advantage, Ma simply smiled and said, "Kindness is always better than cruelty. A person should have a good heart." The words may sound simple, but they reflect her high moral standards and deep compassion for others. Unfortunately, in 1382, the 15th year after the Ming dynasty was founded, Lady Ma fell seriously ill. Zhu Yuanzhang was so anxious he summoned the best physicians. But Ma said, "Life and death are matters of fate. Doctors cannot change destiny. If the medicine doesn't work, they'll be punished, and I don't want to make them suffer. She refused to take medicine and insisted that the physicians should not be held responsible. Even on her deathbed, she was still concerned about the people, urging Zhu Yuanzhang to listen to wise ministers and ensure the common folk could live good lives. In August of that year, Lady Ma passed away at the age of 50. Zhu Yuanzhang was devastated, crying like a child and personally overseeing her funeral arrangements. According to folk tales, on the day of her burial, a heavy rain fell from the sky. Zhu Yuanzhang, in his grief, scolded the feng shui master, blaming him for choosing such a day. Someone quickly explained that even heaven was weeping for Empress Ma. And only then did Zhu Yuanzhang calm down. After Ma's death, Zhu Yuanzhang seemed like a changed man. He became more suspicious and started purging even his founding ministers. Without Ma's calming influence, no one could control his fiery temper anymore. According to historians, Lady Ma was by Zhu Yuanzhang's side from the time he was a low-ranking soldier, offering strategic advice and keeping things in order behind the scenes, all the way until he became emperor and ruled the nation. She was not just his wife, but also his confidant and pillar of support. Although Zhu Yuanzhang was famously suspicious by nature, he deeply trusted Lady Ma and often followed her counsel. It could be said that she was a guiding light in his life, helping him rise from the chaos of war to the imperial throne. As for whether Lady Ma had children, official and popular accounts differ. Official records state that Zhu Yuanzhang's first 5 sons, including Crown Prince Zhu Biao, Prince Qin Zhu Shuang, Prince Jin Zhu Gang, Prince Yan Zhu Di, later the Yongle Emperor, and Prince Zhou Zhu Su, as well as 2 daughters, Princess Ningguo and Princess Anqing, were born to Empress Ma. However, some unofficial histories and folk legends suggest that these children might not have been her biological offspring, but rather adopted. Given the chaotic conditions at the end of the Yuan dynasty and the poor medical environment, it would have been extremely difficult for her to bear and raise 5 healthy children. As a result, some scholars speculate that she may not have given birth. But regardless of her biological connection, she loved and raised them as her own. People in the palace often said that Empress Ma treated the princes with great affection, taught them reading and morality, and took care of their daily lives. Even the palace maids were full of gratitude for her kindness. Lady Ma was buried alongside Zhu Yuanzhang in the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum in Nanjing. The name of the tomb comes from her posthumous title, Xiaozi, filial and kind, symbolizing the ideal of ruling the world with filial piety. Her story teaches us that a person's influence doesn't necessarily come from power, but from wisdom, kindness, and genuine care for others. Through her actions, Lady Ma helped reduce the suffering of the people during the founding of the Ming Dynasty, and strengthened the foundations of Zhu Yuanzhang's reign. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.